This is Kits and Wagers. I'm joined by Chris Owen. We're talking the second half of Game Week 21. We got 3 more games on the docket here. Saturday game, a Sunday game, a Monday game. Chris, you just told me before the show you're moving, so you got a long day ahead of you before we get into our bets here. So it's going to be a fun Friday is what we'll call it.
Yeah.
Finally Friday, fun Friday. There we go.
Yeah, gonna be a long day, but that's okay. We're not moving too far, so I don't have to worry about driving great lengths. We're just moving down the street, so nothing too crazy, and just a good weekend. I think priority number one, however, is getting the TV back up and mounted. So we got a big weekend of games here, and we don't typically do this, but this will be our we'll have given eight bets for Game Week 21. Usually we just give around 4 with the 3 games in a parlay. So getting a little extra here out of the game week. And then, of course, grew up in Wisconsin, big Green Bay Packers fan. We got Packers and Niners on Saturday. So it's priority number one to get that TV mounted and make sure that we're in full swing, ready to go when those games kick off.
Yeah, you're going to need to a lot of stairs, maybe not a lot of driving, but it's gonna be a lot of stairs going up and down here. So
you might have to do a little get limber, a little little warm up, a little cool down.
you can't. You got the dedication here from Chris. I don't know if I was moving today, I don't know if I'd be still doing the show. I'd be like, no, I'm good. Let's pause it for at least a week here.
I have to give out my 8th bet of Game Week 21 on West Ham Sheffield United, that huge matchup. So
the people need to know. After Chris went 3-1 last week, was it 3-1?
I think it was 2-2 to be honest with you. But
all right, for your game bets, you went 2-1. I hit my parlay bet, but my other 3 did not hit. So we're gonna turn that around here. So the first game we're talking about, we got 5 games to pick from. And we didn't want to throw in Arsenal Crystal Palace here, so we're going to have Brentford home against Nottingham Forest. Again, check out our soccer betting pages where you can find all of the odds and compare odds from 4 different sports books. We also got futures over on the site as well. Brentford home -115. This one moved a little bit because I wrote this down yesterday. It was -105. It is now -115 for Brentford to win. Nottingham Forest are +320. And over 2.5 goals, -125. Under 2.5 goals is +100. Looks like, I guess depends. I guess this is where you want to compare sports books because Chris gave me his bet 7 hours ago, actually, I believe. And he had a different number. So we're going to have to find the best number here for his bet. But the big news is what I'll say. Ivan Toney is finally back here. So Ivan Toney is going to start. Thomas Frank said Ivan Toney is going to start. That is the big news of the weekend. And they also added Sergio Reguilon. So they actually have a real left back they can use. I think he's actually going to start right away just because they don't really have all their fullbacks are injured. Saman Ghoddos is also away at African Cup of Nations. So getting some help here, Brentford, after it's been a pretty difficult couple months. Bad news for Nottingham Forest is they don't have Morgan Gibbs-White, and their back line, they're down a bunch of center backs. So Felipe remains out. So next to Murillo, it could be Omo Bamidele, who got I think he scored his first Nottingham Forest goal midweek in the FA Cup. The other option is Joe Worrell, who was basically banned from training earlier in the season. Omo Bamidele is a former Norwich City center back who barely played in the Premier League with Norwich City. So Nottingham Forest has some issues while Brentford are actually getting some new players. So I'm leaning Brentford here, but are you also leaning Brentford?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in a similar sense here. Brentford at home, obviously, that plays a big role here. I don't think they've been super. They haven't been like the best team at home, but they're at least not. I think they're like bottom third. Actually, I think they're 3-3-4, so 4 losses at home. Not the best showing there, but I think they're the first thing I looked at when I looked at this game was Ivan Toney anytime goal scoring odds. Man, I feel like, had I got suspended for 8 months for betting, I would probably be like come on the pitch with my hair on fire and be ready to score some goals. Of course,
Thomas Frank said he was like an 8-year-old schoolboy or something is what he said. 8-year-old boy. Yeah,
and
on the training pitches at least.
You have to believe, like, he hasn't had 21 games or 20 games or, plus FA Cup and League Cup. Like, he's fully fit. He's raring to go. I'm sure that during the time that he spent on the sideline here in the past months, he's just been training, not dealing with the injuries that you would typically deal with in like the rigors of a full half season of the Premier League. And, Brentford's kind of struggled to score goals. It's not like they've been just like filling it up with goals either. They have, they're probably bottom half of the table. They have 26 goals in 19 matches played here. Excuse me, in 19 matches played. You got to believe they start to find the back of the net at a little bit more consistent rate when he's in the lineup. There's so many injuries for both teams. They're gonna. It's good. I'm interested to see how this kind of all turns out. But when you go to the handy dandy EPL lineups page on RotoWire.com, you just see a laundry list of guys who are going to be missing here. So I like Brentford at home personally. I like Toney coming back. He's at plus 100 anytime goal scoring odds. And it looks like there's been a little bit of movement. You mentioned, I think the line moved here in the last few hours from it's a little bit more towards Brentford. Same can be said for the over. I looked last night, and this was literally probably about 11:30 p.m. last night. It's a little after 7 a.m. here. And it's at minus 120. The over 2.5 I have on the DraftKings Sportsbook is minus 125. It was minus 115 when I looked. So a fair bit of movement. Usually you don't see it go too much in a short amount of time. So I'm wondering if, maybe some of the defensive injuries that Nottingham Forest has have affected the line a bit. But I like the over 2.5 at minus 115. I think, Brentford they have a striker now. They have, not that Johan Vissa wasn't in Buemo, haven't been like terrible, but Ivan Toney's Ivan Toney. There's a reason he's been rumored to go to like Arsenal and some other big clubs. So I think just the addition of him, and they can kind of get back to playing their system that has been so successful for the last few years. I like the over 2.5 goals here at minus 115. It's not like Forest are like a super amazing defensive team away from home either. So they're probably, I think they give up 20 goals here in 10 matches away from home. So I like over 2.5, and looks like your senses maybe looking at the B's as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with your bet. Another one of my options was Brentford over 1.5 goals. I think that one's now minus 120, minus 125. So that one's also moving up. Those were the two bets that I first looked at. Nottingham Forest have, played better, I guess we could say well under Nuno Espirito Santo. They got the win at Newcastle. They got the win against Manchester United. I'm still not sold that they're just like this new team that's just going to be filling up goals kind of thing. They still have some defensive issues. We saw that in the first and second leg against Blackpool in the FA Cup. They put out, some fairly strong squads, but those games were 2-2. And then I believe they needed extra time to win that second leg this past week. Speaking of extra time, Brentford also needed extra time in their trip to Wolverhampton, though they lost. I do think so. Nottingham Forest, their match was Wednesday. Brentford played Tuesday, though. Let me confirm that really quickly. Yeah, so Brentford, both teams played in extra time. Brentford actually have a day more rest, though. So you got 120 minutes for Nottingham, a lot of these Nottingham Forest guys on Wednesday. So this is a pretty quick turnaround for a team that already has a lot of absences, as you can see on our injury list. And so you throw Ivan Toney in, Reguilón if he starts. I just think he will, because the options are slim for Brentford. No Gibbs White also hurts. Brentford at home, we always talk up, or at least I always talk up, Thomas Frank, master motivator. They've lost 7 of their last 8 league matches. Yeah. They're actually getting some pieces back. I believe last time we saw Brentford in league play, Though I guess maybe he got it. There's been so many cup matches. I'm just thinking of Matthias Jensen. I guess that was I think against Everton in maybe the FA Cup or something, where he got injured, but he's back nevertheless. So they're getting some players back. They're getting some. Ben Mee also had a 3-game suspension, so he's going to be back in the back line. It's been a couple weeks since Brentford had a league match, so I'm just trying to remember everything that's happened in cup play for them. But I just think they're in a spot here. You look at the table and it's like, oh, Brentford are actually kind of near the bottom. They're kind of fighting relegation. I felt like earlier in the season, it was like Brentford, top 10 bet kind of a thing. Brentford looking really well kind of a thing, but 7 of 8 losses. 7 of the last 8 games they've lost. And I think, coming out of this small league break because of, they've had a bunch of cup matches. I think maybe this is the time with Toney in here. They added Reguilón. He's gotten a lot of comparison to Rico Henry. So I think maybe this is the start of the turnaround here. So I'm going Brentford to win at -115.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, they have been so poor lately, or so they have not been good. Looking at their home, and also they've been, talk about Thomas Frank. I mean, their defensive setup has been pretty bad. At least,
well, they lost all their fullbacks, so they've been mixing and matching fullbacks, which just kind of changes, a little bit everything.
Yeah, I mean, they I guess the last few matches here, 4-1 at home. These are all at home for Brentford, but 4-1 they lost to Wolves. I mean, you can't give up 4 goals to Wolves. I don't care who you are. 2-1 to Villa, which, Villa a top side of the season, and then beat Luton Town, 1-0 loss to Arsenal, and a 3-2 win over West Ham. So been a fair bit of goals. And then you even look across at Nottingham Forest, and them away from home they somehow came away with a 3-1 win recently over Newcastle, which is a great result for them. Newcastle, of course, is struggling due to their own injuries. I would say there's don't have enough pieces really, but a lot of goals in all the games here. I think despite Brentford's kind of inability to find the back of the net as of late, they've been conceding a lot of goals, and I feel like we might see like a 2-1 kind of maybe 3-2 type of game.
Yeah, I think that's a good bet. I think there's going to be goals in this one. Maybe I'll do some single game parlay, throw in Toney, maybe Brentford corners, but get Brentford to win over 2.5 goals, Brentford over 1.5 goals, whatever. And you can get up there and plus 200, plus 300 odds, something like that.
Yeah.
Next game we got Chris's team here. Bournemouth, our home. Bournemouth are plus 340 against Liverpool, who are -140 to win. The Salah news of the Salah injury does not affect us here, but he picked up an injury with Egypt yesterday. We'll see what happens with that. But the draw is plus 330, and then we're getting over 3.5 goals is plus 120, under 3.5 goals is -150, under 2.5 goals is plus 165. So I don't think we're going to get really. I think Klopp's press conference basically said we're not really getting anyone back, so no one's coming back for Liverpool. We know the injuries. I guess Conor Bradley hasn't started in league play yet. His one start came in the FA Cup, I want to say. So if you did not watch that one, if you're unfamiliar, Conor Bradley started the first game that Trent Alexander-Arnold was injured. So he's going to be at right back, and then we'll see how they line up everywhere else. The one thing I'll say for Bournemouth is they have a bunch of injuries here, and I actually have Marcus Tavernier projected to be their left back. So Milos Kerkez is out. Adam Smith is out. Lloyd Kelly is not 100%. Not going to be ready to start, I don't believe. And then Dango Otara, who had been playing left back, he's also out. Ryan Fredericks is another fullback. He's out. So basically, they have no fullbacks. Tavernier started at left back in their recent FA Cup match. And then the other side of that, Max Aarons, who was out for like 3 months, he's back and he's started a couple matches here. So a bunch of absences for Bournemouth. Their back line is very suspect in a spot against Liverpool. I should also say Marco Senesi is suspended. So they also have a different center back next to Zabarnia. So a lot of changes here on this Bournemouth back line, something that you don't want when you're facing Liverpool. But how much does it matter? Maybe that, Bournemouth are at home. Or is Liverpool just going to, throw down 5 goals on them against a makeshift back line?
It certainly helps that Bournemouth is home. It's not, although, you look at their record at home and they're three wins, 3 draws, 3 losses. So it's not like they've been, the best home team. In fact, I think they've they've taken more points away from home, which is pretty, I guess not common for most teams. But yeah, the defensive worries for Bournemouth are tough. And then I didn't see the Dominic Solanke injury, but it looks like on our lineups page he's questionable.
He's fine. He's fine. He had a knock, and he missed their cup match like 2 weeks ago. Fine.
Okay, so he should probably play. Yeah, that said, I mean, I think you look at the Liverpool lineup, they're going to be missing, upwards of probably 4 starters at least, if you think about it. I mean, Salah, probably 5 starters: Szoboszlai, Salah, Robertson, Trent, and then Matip for whatever he's borderline starter, I guess, with Konate in there. But
We'll say borderline on Matip there.
What's that?
We'll say borderline.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call him a regular starter
to start the season before he blew out his wheel. But
yeah,
I think what this game kind of like the over-unders are kind of crazy that you got to go to 3.5 to hit the over and get like plus odds. That was what stood out to me initially. I watched. Yeah, I mean, I think the most recent game was their game against Fulham, where it was 2-1. They like really struggled to the first probably 70 minutes until they brought on Gakpo and Nunez. They struggled to create chances. It was just like super bland and not really. Jota was probably their best player on the pitch that day. I was really surprised to see that you had to go all the way to over 3.5. I think this game's going to lack goals. I do. They're missing a lot of their creators in the midfield. They're in terms of Endo as well. No Szoboszlai, guys who are moving the ball up the pitch. I think despite the one thing that does concern me about like an under bet is the fact that Bournemouth are pretty knocked around. It's knocked up. Knocked around defensively. They're lacking some typical starters too, but I mean they're going to probably start Harvey Elliott, who I love as a sub, but he just like doesn't bring it enough maybe in the starting 11, at least from what I've seen.
I mean, he's not Salah, so
yeah, right. I mean, you're putting like a 22, 21-year-old out there on the right who's not, he lacks pace. He lacks pace for a guy who's sitting at a desk chair, talking about soccer. So I do think, I think they bring maybe Nunez off the bench again. He was very decisive when he came on, 2 assists right away in that game over Fulham. And that went over Fulham. So anyways, enough about all that. My bet is I think this game's I think it's like 1-0, 2-0. And it's last night I looked, but I think you mentioned last night it was under 2.5 is plus 175. I think I see this being pretty low scoring. I think this morning you said it was plus 165 for the under 2.5 now. So little odds are going towards.
Depends where you look, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not typical where I go in terms of the number, but I think it's good to explore here. Four of Liverpool's 5 last away matches have been under 2.5. They beat Burnley 2-0. That 2-1 win over Crystal Palace, 2-0 to Sheffield United, 1-1 against Manchester City, and 1-1 against Luton Town. So I mean, there's a few teams in there aside from City that are a similar caliber of what they're going to face at Bournemouth, and likely Bournemouth lacking some guys up front or in defense are going to probably try to pack it in and play that kind of style against these guys.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see just how Bournemouth play this one, given the defensive absences, and then you have Semenyo, who has been a regular for the most part of the season. He's away at AFCON as well, so there are some more changes going on. We could see Cook, Christie, and Alex Scott all start. I don't believe that's actually happened this season, and that would be maybe more defensive. But just a tough spot. I think your bet, under 2.5 goals at plus 165, 175, whatever. It kind of makes sense. You are, as you said, just worried about Bournemouth's back line, but Liverpool away from home, they score fewer goals, which I guess that's the case with everyone. But just comparison. 26 goals at home, 17 away. Those matches do seem just to be a little more not as up and down, I guess, as some of those home matches where then you take out Salah and that kind of a thing. Maybe Bournemouth, maybe Iraola has his guys, ready to go despite some absences. but you're getting a ton of value here with under 2.5 goals. And if you think it's going to be low scoring, maybe you just ignore the fact that, under 3.5, whatever. You just ignore it. So let's just go for more money kind of thing. So are you thinking 2-0 Liverpool, or do you think Bournemouth getting a point?
I honestly am a little weary of Bournemouth getting a point here. They're tough at home. Liverpool, I mean, they are coming off a slight, like, what is it, a week, 10-day break, I think, from their last match, which helps, but it's not like they're returning anyone from injuries. So
Yeah.
like it's like that. There's not that boost of like getting a player back in the starting lineup. I think it's
15 days.
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see like a 1-1 here. Liverpool love playing from behind too. So if you're like, there's some crazy stat out there about how many times they've like come back to either get a win from or get points from losing positions. So if you're into that, you can get Bournemouth first goal plus 140. Liverpool have been conceding plenty of goals, off the jump to the opponent. So if you're into that, check out that, and even Bournemouth double chances plus 110. If you're like, okay, Liverpool missing a bunch of pieces, I think Bournemouth can take a point at home. Maybe parlay them both. That could be a fun parlay too.
Parlay them both. I guess I haven't given my bet yet. I'm going over 10.5 corners here at minus 110. I was kind of, all the absences, the absences for both teams. So I'm thinking, maybe not thinking the same as what Chris is, but maybe these teams both struggle to score. But I think not the A midfield, not the A back line for Liverpool, and not the A back line for Bournemouth. Maybe it's just, some mistakes on the back line. Maybe it's a little more open in the midfield kind of thing where Bournemouth can get corners, Liverpool can get corners. So if I think both teams can get corners, let's just take over on corners. So we're at over 10.5 corners is minus 110. Let's just say, okay, maybe it's back and forth, but both teams struggle to score, and then both our bets hit.
Yes, that could be the case.
Will be the case. All right, that is. I guess I will say Liverpool had an 11-day break, and then 3 days after this one, they do have the second leg against Fulham. So
yeah, I do want to give out one more bet because it's worth noting. Dominic Solanke, anytime goal scoring odds, plus 150. This is a revenge game. Always good to think about. He's been pretty good for Bournemouth too up front. I think, you mentioned that he should play despite having a little mini knock. So always good to think about the revenge game goal scoring odds.
Big revenge game. It's just Klopp. Klopp actually is a big, massive fan of Solanke. One of our writers, Ian was letting me know. He's sending me some quotes on Klopp talking about Solanke and how he's like one of his favorite players, kind of a thing.
Yeah, it is a bit. It is interesting what he said about him, but I mean, he was never good for him. Now, he's been really good this season for Bournemouth, and I think they sold him for like 18 million. It's like they sold it like him and Rhian Brewster around the same time. And both got a little bit of money back, which is kind of Brewster. I don't know whatever happened to him, but yeah, Solanke's been, really coming into form this season, which is, you like to see.
One more note here. When these teams last season at Liverpool, it was that 9-0 match where Liverpool won. The reverse fixture, Bournemouth won 1-0.
Yeah.
So it's in play. Bournemouth 1-0. Maybe we get that here. Maybe we get Bournemouth 1-0. And Liverpool have like 20 corners because they're just pressing for the final 80 minutes of the game, something like that.
Yeah.
We got Monday Night Football, though. Then the third game we're talking about, Brighton are home against Wolverhampton. Brighton are minus 160, pretty sizable here against a Wolverhampton team who has played a bunch of matches, when you compare the teams. Wolverhampton are plus 400 to win. The draw is plus 320. And then we're going to get over 2.5 goals is minus 165. Under 2.5 goals is plus 165. If you want to bet over 3.5 goals, that's plus 150. And just speaking of, in terms of when these teams last played, so Wolverhampton, they had the 2 legs against Brentford. So Wolverhampton played, I guess this game's Monday, so maybe not as big of an issue there. They had the 2 FA Cup matches, and then Brighton actually have 16 days since they played in the FA Cup against Stoke City. So Brighton, I believe Brighton are one of the teams that went down south to warm weather train. So, they're a little more rested up than Wolverhampton, just a little bit here. But Brighton at home, what do you got, Chris?
Yeah, I looked at two different things here. There was a couple things that popped out to me, but I think you look at both their records. So Brighton at home, Wolverhampton away from home, just so many goals as of late. Brighton, their past 5 matches, they had back-to-back 1-1 draws with Fulham and Sheffield. Then they beat Brentford 2-1. They drew Burnley 1-1, and then of course this was back before Christmas. They won 4-2 against Tottenham. So it's been a bit since they've played at home here, like nearly, almost a whole month. So kind of wild in that endeavor. And then Wolverhampton lately been really, they did just beat Brentford away from home in a 4-1 result. I guess that was also about a month ago, right before the holidays too. But other than that, they lost 3-0 to West Ham, 2-1 to Arsenal, 3-2 to Fulham, 2-1 to Sheffield. So plenty of goals in both clubs at home and away. The first thing I looked at was like both teams to score. That, however, is minus 150. Fun note is that opponents have scored against Brighton in every single home Premier League match for them. So they've yet to keep a clean sheet at home. And then you're not really getting good odds there on the minus 150. Odds makers think there's going to be a fair bit of goals. I will say Wolverhampton have 1 draw away from home this season in 10 total matches. They've won 3, they've drawn 1, and they've lost 6 matches. So that leads me to believe I want to get a little bit better odds. I don't typically like this bet because you need a few things to happen, but I'm taking the jump this weekend and going to go both teams to score, no draw. It's plus 130, so slightly better odds.
You need 3 goals, but it just can't be 2-2.
Yeah, exactly. But you need both teams to score, and you need somebody to win. So it's pretty much like a parlay without being a parlay. You're not getting those odds. But that's where I'm at. I think we see like a 3-1 game. I think Brighton will probably just like shovel some goals in.
Yeah, so it's a tough one just to look at. We saw the over/under odds, and Wolverhampton have been playing really well. They just advanced past Brentford. They've just kind of figured things out a little bit, maybe not a little bit, but a lot. Was it their last league game was on the 30th, so that's kind of crazy. They're now the 19th. They have, so I guess that's the winter break for you. I think they've had 3 cup matches since that. I guess it's only 2 cup matches. They weren't in the League Cup, so I guess they've had some rest, but they've been playing well. At first, it was a lot of they're getting goals off the counter kind of thing. Now they are playing a little differently. But João Gomez, who's been a big part of that, their central midfielder, he is suspended for this one. They also don't have Hee-Chan, though they do get Pedro Neto has been playing since his return from injury, so that's a boost for them because he was out for a couple months or so. Brighton were they had a big stretch of some pretty iffy, poor results in there. They had that 6-1 result against Aston Villa. And then they tweaked some formation stuff around, and they have looked a little better in recent games. They got those 4 goals against Tottenham, which is probably maybe the highlight there. But they have this midfield where, first of all, they got Estupinian back, but James Milner has been playing in like this midfield role with Pascal Gross and Billy Gilmore. They just kind of had to tweak a bunch of stuff up because Miedema has been out as well. So that needless to say, I've kind of didn't really have a thought of where to go here. You couldn't even take Wolverhampton double chance to get decent odds. And then what I said, Brighton minus 160. So I'm going with another corner bet. Just take it there. So instead of taking Brighton corners in the first half, because in a lot of these games, Wolverhampton, they get off on the counter and they get corners themselves. Let's just take over 4.5 corners in the first half, minus 120. The way these teams play, I think it's going to be, Brighton may have the majority of possession, but I think Wolverhampton will get on the counter and then force some corners themselves. So I think both teams will get a couple corners at a minimum, and 5 corners is nothing. So over 4.5 corners, in the first half at -120, and then Chris has both teams to score no draw at +130.
You mentioned the Wolves. No, the double chances. I had +125 last night. I would need to double check again, but
Oh, is it? Okay.
yeah. So I mean, not terrible, but like I said, Wolves just one draw away from home all season. So
They're either going to win or they're going to lose.
Yeah, they're not. We refuse to let them draw here. So
yeah, I guess they're +400 to win. That does seem kind of strong given how well Wolves are playing.
Yeah, they've been great. I mean, FA Cup they had that I guess it wasn't 2 legs, but the replay where they just won on penalties over Brentford. I think it was penalty. No, it was extra time. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, yeah, they've been in great form. They have won their last 3, at least their last 3 EPL games. So yeah, this is actually a fun one. This is Monday, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can look at it like, okay, Brighton have 16 days between games, and Wolverhampton just played 120 minutes this past week. But
yeah,
I don't know if I want to put too much into that. I believe actually Wolverhampton went down south the warm weather between their 2 legs in the FA Cup. But nevertheless, we got our team parlay up. So, Chris, what are you going with? You're looking at this West Ham Sheffield United match, which has, like, I guess every game we're talking about, a lot of absences.
Yeah. I mean, quickly before we get into the parlay, all these teams are going on warm weather trainings. I think Man City was in like Saudi Arabia or something like that. I saw a couple other teams are in some warm weather trainings. Adam, when do you think that RotoWire is going to get us in a little warm weather training and like get us out on a beach? Maybe like a couple cooler, some kits and beers, maybe some beers and wagers. I've been kind of wondering that myself.
I'm gonna say that's never gonna happen.
Maybe it's the annual RotoWire trip to Vegas. Maybe we'll
based off the last few weeks. What I'll say, it's never gonna happen. I guess Ian is saying Vegas. He thinks he thought Vegas was the warm weather training. I guess you could look at it like that. Vegas in the summer when it's 120 degrees. That is our warm weather training.
Yeah, that's fair. I missed last year, so I maybe I'll have to get back out there and consider that my warm weather training. But anyways, back to business here on the parlay. Yeah, I was man. I'm glad you messaged me earlier this morning. I had sent out West Ham money line because I was considering that at +120, but they're missing, similar to Liverpool. They're missing Jared Bowen, Paqueta, Kudus, who's playing in AFCON right now. And then Ben Rama is suspended, so they're missing a ton of guys. And it's never good. I mean, God bless him, but it's never good when you're trotting out Danny Ings as your starting forward in an EPL game. I love the guy, love his work rate and everything he's done, but that's just not a recipe for a ton of goals, I don't think, especially at this age. So they're playing. I mean, they have their midfield's pretty much, at least the kind of anchors with Alvarez and JWP are in there. So yeah. I think what they're going to do, and then it looks like we have Divin Mubama in at forward. I don't know much about that.
He's a young stud. It's either going to be him or Maxwell Cornet.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know much about Divin. Unfortunately, maybe I'll find out a lot.
I think he's like 19.
Okay. All right. Well, let's hope we find out a lot more about him this weekend. But anyways, all that said, I was on West Ham money line. I'm a little weary of that now. I do think this is going to be a very low scoring affair. You look at the most recent matches for West Ham. It's crazy. It's like pretty much everyone's a shutout to some capacity. They lost to Bristol City this past week in the FA Cup 1-0. They did try there. That was a replay, so it was 1-1 in the previous match, but it was 0-0 Brighton, 2-0 to Arsenal, 2-0 to Manchester United. You look, there's like 3 more shutouts in their past 5 games. So just not a ton of goals. I like no on both teams to score. That's at +100. I think that West Ham defensively they'll be fine, but they'll be playing a style which is typical to David Moyes fashion, which is a little counterattacking. They're pretty strong in the players that they're going to put in the starting 11 in the back half of the lineup, but they're just lacking the typical guys that you'd see up front. I mean, maybe Danny Ings, turns back the clock a bit here and finds the back of the net, but and then there's the Sheffield United aspect of this too. It's not like they're they've bitten me a lot this season, which kind of pisses me off. But on my bets, but I don't have a ton of faith in what they're trotting out up front. And all that considered, yeah, I think both teams to score here is a play.
Yeah, Mubama maybe. I think at least before this season, it was like Mubama is going to be the perfect West Ham striker kind of thing. Just needs a little more time. I think he's kind of like they want him to turn into Kudus, but they got Kudus, so they don't really need him to be Kudus. But maybe right now, because Kudus is away on AFCON, maybe they need him to be that. He started over Ings. I don't think Moyes likes Ings too much. Or I think there's actually, I don't know if there's rumors just about him just like leaving during the transfer window, but because they have no one else, it's like, okay, we actually need to play him because we have no one else. So that's an interesting situation. But yeah, if you can't score at Bristol City, I know they're down a guy for about the final 50 minutes. I don't really have a ton of faith in them either. Sheffield United maybe playing a little better under Chris Wilder, so you got that as well. My bet, part of this parlay, is an Arsenal corner bet because it's Arsenal. They're going to have 70% possession, something like that. They're going against a team without Michael Olise. This Crystal Palace team, maybe about a month ago, it was Roy Hodgson out kind of thing. And they had these 2 legs against Everton where, they just lost 1-0 against Everton. They subbed out Eze at like the 66th minute. They don't have IU and a lot of these guys. And I don't know, maybe this is one of those games where it's like, okay, Roy Hodgson, we're gonna just like get a goal 1-0 and then eke out, I don't know, something. But Crystal Palace just really haven't, partly because of injuries, they really haven't shown a lot. But I'm just going Arsenal minus 1.75 corners in the first half. I think this is a spot where, okay, Arsenal have been struggling to score. They've been off for a little bit now, but they've been struggling to score. I just think they're just going to try and put it on early. They're going to be an attacking third for, I don't know, the majority of the first half here. It's going to lead to corners. So we got Arsenal minus 1.75 corners in the first half against Crystal Palace. Minus 115. Chris has no on both teams to score between Sheffield United and West Ham. That's plus 100. That equals plus 273 odds. Team Parlay, there it is. Let me pull up the cheat sheet. Chris could not find it, but I found it clicking through some rankings here. So the cheat sheet for the second half of Week 21 is right here. You gotta click on like the Fantrax or the FPL rankings for Week 21, and the link is in there. So there you go.
That's it. If I couldn't find it, there's probably a good chance somebody else couldn't find it.
What are you going to do? I guess there's nothing else to talk about here. Chris has to move. We've talked about all these games. Do you think Arsenal are going to finally get back on the winning track here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they pretty much have mostly. I mean, I think you have Trossard in the starting 11 or in the starting lineup here for them, which I love because
we'll see if Jesus is ready to start. That's one of the questions.
Yeah, I mean, he would be a good addition, but it's not like Reece Nelson or Nketiah have really brought a whole lot to the starting lineup for them. At least, not a ton of goals. I mean, Reece Nelson, I think, started that FA Cup match. And they were just poor that game. But yeah, a London derby here, it would be Arteta. I mean, I've been joking about this to my Arsenal friends who are fans. This keeps going south, man. Arteta, like that hot seat, man. It might be getting a little hotter here. So I think they need a win. They're obviously not. I say that like tongue in cheek, but they are due for a result here any day now.
Arteta hot seat. I don't know if I'm going that far.
There's a huge group chat I'm in about EPL, and I was gleefully watching that FA Cup win over Arsenal and just ripping. I was a menace with the Arteta hot seat takes.
That was an interesting game. Is that the game? Was that the first game Bradley started, or is it a different one? It might have been
No, you're talking about
Connor Bradley.
Connor Bradley. Yeah, no, he came in against somebody in the away mat. There was an away.
Oh, he got injured in the Arsenal game. That's right. Okay, TAA did. Okay.
No, I think he was out for that game. But Bradley came in an away game, I thought, and then
no, he got injured in that game and played through the injury. That's what happened against Arsenal.
Played in the 6th, and Bradley slid in and right, and then Bradley started the League Cup game against Fulham the following match.
Yeah. I'm just saying that TA got hurt in that game. He played through the injury and then made it worse. All for the win against Arsenal.
Hey, needed it.
That's all we got, though. RotoWire.com/soccer trial, 48-hour trial to get this cheat sheet, I guess. But also, let's win some bets. Chris had some wins last week. We need to get that team parlay back because the money total is not looking good on the team parlay. But let's give a shout to Chris on his traveling day and thank him for jumping on this show and giving some free bets out to the people before he moves out in the West Coast. You got rain over there? How's the weather for your move?
It's Seattle, man. It's always rainy. It's ground. Yep, ground looks wet.
Okay, there you go.
But luckily, just moving down the street a bit, so I don't gotta drive a U-Haul or nothing. So
luckily, you don't get the Arctic frost that we're getting over here.
Looks brutal in the Midwest.
We got a couple feet of snow. I had the blizzard kit on last week. Got all the shoveling done. Now it's going down to negative temperatures tonight. So that's just the Midwest for you. It's a lot of fun out here, but we're gonna get some rain next week, so it's gonna be really muddy pretty soon. But Chris, thanks for joining me. You can find him on Twitter at CHROwen8. I am at RotoZdroik. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see when we're back because there are no games next weekend. Oh, there is
FA Cup next weekend.
And then the following week, it is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday matches. So we're going to talk about the schedule. We'll see about Chris's recording room. That is another question as well in his new humble abode there. But thank you, Chris. We'll see everyone. Let's win some bets.
Thanks, Adam.